Players.
Ready? Yep. Okay, welcome everybody. In Machom Liadus, this past year since October 7th, we've been starting every single class with a capital Tilim and Tzedakah, that this should be in the schus for Eden and Eretz Yisrael and Eden all around the world, that we should see the ultimate nitzach and ultimate victory for Eden, and that all our enemies should be defeated, and there should be total peace in Eretz Yisrael, all the hostages and all the soldiers come home with their hate. So we'll start with Kapitel Chav, Lam Natseach, Mizman LeDavid, Yanchu Adonai, B'yom Tzara, Yisagev Hashem, Elohei Yaakov. Yishlach Ezecha Mikodesh, Umitzion Yisadeka. Yizkar Kolman Chisecha, Vayloscha Yidashne Sela. Iten Lechachol Babecha, V'chol Atzoscha Yamale. Narano B'shua Secha, U'B'Shem Eloheinu Nidgel. Yamale Adonai Kol Mishalei Secha. Ata Yadaiti, Ki Yeshia Adonai Meshichai. Yanehu Meshmei Kotrei. B'Gvureis Yesha Yaminei. Eile Varechav, Ve'ele Basusim, V'Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nasker. Hema Korov V'Nafolu, Anachnu Kamnu V'Naseidu. Adonai Heshia, HaMelech Yaneinu V'Yem Kareinu. Gave the title to this class as Living with Chai Elul. Obviously, it's a little bit of a play on words. Chai Elul means, of course, it literally means the 18th day of Elul, but Chai also means life. So I want to first start with a little introduction, a little story. A story with Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev, that there was a chassid whose daughter was engaged to be married, and he didn't have the means to participate financially in the wedding, and came to the Rabbi Yitzchak for bracha. Rabbi Yitzchak told him that he should buy a lottery ticket. Those days were different than now. They didn't have lottery tickets every single day of the week, or once a week or twice a week, huge lotteries. But there was a huge lottery that came out once a year, or once in 6 months. He told him to buy one of these lottery tickets. He told the Rebbe, but the wedding is before the lottery is going to play. And nevertheless, the Rebbe told him, it's fine, it'll be okay. So he bought a lottery ticket. They still didn't know how is he going to pay for this wedding. One day he was traveling, and he was in a hotel, and then there was a general in the Russian army that comes to him, and apparently he had a dream. And the dream was that the Jew who's in this room of the hotel has the winning lottery number. So he came to him and he said, Probably didn't tell him the reason, but he said to him, I have a feeling that I want your lottery ticket. I'll pay you so much money that you'll have your ticket. Anyway, the Yid knew about that, but Levi Yitzchak told him to buy it, so he refused to sell it. But they gave him a higher price, a higher price, a higher price. No matter how much he raised the price, the Jew didn't want to sell it because he knew that this was a bracha of Rabbi Yitzchak. At that point, the general pulled out his sword and said, I'm no longer asking you, I'm telling you. Either you give me the lottery ticket or here's the sword. When he saw he had no choice, he had no choice. So basically, he did switch lottery tickets. He gave him his, and the Jew gave the general his lottery ticket. But he said, I'm not going to go back on my word. I offered you this large sum of money for the ticket, which was nothing compared to the lottery prize, and I'm going to give it to you anyway. And he gave it to him. So first of all, he had money for the wedding. Now that this person gave him so many thousands of ruble. And later, guess what? His lottery ticket that he got from the general was the winning number. It's an amazing story. The point I want to bring out in the story is, I don't know whether this happened or not, but imagine if the general would have found out that the lottery ticket, he obviously found out that the ticket he had wasn't the winning number. But what if he would have found out that the ticket that he had, and he paid thousands of dollars that the Jew should exchange with him, if he would find out that was the winning ticket which he had in his hand, he would have naturally felt such remorse, such regret, it's beyond words what he would have felt. When a Yid has an opportunity and has a gift, and we don't take advantage of it, we just let it go, we stop and think about it, it's equally painful. So the purpose of this class is how do we live with Chai Elul? That to recognize the gift that we have with the connection to Chassidus, and of course that's all brought out on the day of Chai Elul. Hashgacha Pratis, every one of us, each one through their own journey, Hashem led us in this direction, that we're connected to the teachings of Chassidus and connected to this special day of Chai Elul. The Frierdiker Rebbe in the year 1943, when he was here in America, started off the Sikha by saying, Good Yontif. And he said, it's 50 years now from the first time that I heard from my father on Chai Elul, Good Yontif. Today is the birthday of Shnei HaMa'oros HaGdolim, the two great luminaries, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. So this was something which not everybody knew, these details, and a lot of the details about these days weren't known. These are things that the Frierdiker Rebbe was the first one to share them with the public. Up until then, this was passed down from Rebbe to Rebbe, but not made known to the public. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was the one who shared a lot of this information. So I want to mention that in essence, we can mention 9 events that all of them happened on or near and connection to Chai Elul, which shows us the importance of the day. I'll mention them in chronological order. So the first thing is the Baal Shem Tov was born on Chai Elul. That was in the year Tov Nun Ches, known by it's called Nachas, 1698. The second thing was that the Baal Shem Tov began to learn and study Chassidus with Achi Shiloni on that day. Achi Shiloni, who is Achi Shiloni? Achi Shiloni was a Navi, and his name is found in the book of Nevi'im. But who was he? He was the Rebbe, the teacher of Eliyahu Navi. And the Rambam writes that he actually lived very long. He was amongst those Yidden that left Mitzrayim, which means he left Mitzrayim. He was standing by Har Sinai by Matan Torah, and he lived till the generation of David HaMelech and Eliyahu Hanavi, and he was the teacher of the Baal Shem Tov to teach him Chassidus. In fact, just to get a little bit of an idea of how awesome that is, the Baal Shem Tov, when he relates the story of how he first started learning with Achia Shaleni, he goes into many details, how he appeared to him first in a dream, and then they made up to meet at a certain place, and then they went to this cave and they would study. And after learning with him the first day, he recognized that this is a very big tzaddik, and he recognized that this is a tzaddik not of this generation, but of an earlier generation, but he didn't know who it was. When he asked him his name, he said, "Not yet. The time hasn't come yet for me to tell you my name." And they continued learning for a year. At the end of the year, one day, as he was saying goodbye, he finished learning. Achia Shaleni told the Baal Shem Tov who he is, that he is Achia Shaleni. After learning with him for a year, when he heard who it is, he fainted. I think this should give us a little bit of an idea of what it means that the Baal Shem Tov was studying with Achia Shaleni. But when did that start? On Chayil. 10 years later, Baal Shem Tov came out in the open and he began to teach and spread the teachings of Chassidus to the rest of the world. So these are the basic three things that happened with the Baal Shem Tov. Number one, his birth, physically. Number two, spiritually, he began to study with Achia Shaleni. And number three, that's when he reached the position of leadership, where he began to teach to the rest of the world the teachings of Chassidus. Another thing that happened on Chai Elul following that was the Alter Rebbe's parents were both followers of the Baal Shem Tov. And when they decided to get married, they went to the Baal Shem Tov to get his haskama, to get his consent. And he also told them that it's on the condition of that they should get married on Chai Elul. That year, Chai Elul was on Shabbos, like this year. So they got married on Friday, which led into the wedding. So again, clearly from the story, the way it's in the Sichos, their wedding is connected to Chai Elul. We know that a year later, they came to the Baal Shem Tov because they weren't blessed with a child yet. And the Baal Shem Tov told them that next year, on this day, you'll be holding a baby in your hands. And exactly a year later, 2 years after their marriage, the Alter Rebbe was born on that same day, Chai Elul. Another thing that happened on Chai Elul was in the generation of the Mittel Rebbe. The Mittel Rebbe became Rebbe in a time where, this is right after, or maybe even during the war between Russia and France. And at that time, the Alter Rebbe abandoned his home in the city of Lozhna and was traveling. And in fact, in Derech HaTeva, just going by the natural reasons, this is what led to the Alter Rebbe's Istalkus. He was on the run from Napoleon, and it was the cold, freezing Russian winters. As a result of that, he got sick, and that led to the Istalkus. So the Mittel Rebbe needed a new place to live, and he chose the city of Lubavitch. When was the day that he moved into the city of Lubavitch? And that became the headquarters of Chassidus Chabad and the teachings of Chabad throughout the world. That began on Chai Elul. That was the day that he moved into the city of Lubavitch. In the generation of the Rebbe Rashab, we just celebrated this yesterday, and that is that the Rebbe Rashab established the Temchei Tmimim, which is a very major part of Chabad Chassidus history in itself. But we know that the establishment of Temchei Tmimim wasn't just another yeshiva, or yeshiva with some new idea that we also learn Chassidus. In other words, there were yeshivas where they learned only Gemara, Halacha, but not Chassidus. There were also places where they learned Kabbalah, they learned the hidden secrets of Torah, but it was a yeshiva for that, not for Nigla. Here the Rebbe Rashab created a new yeshiva, which was a combination of both. They studied 4 hours a day Chassidus, 7 hours a day Nigla, and this yeshiva was actually a beginning of a new era, the way it's explained in the Sichos. It was a new era in terms of Chassidus becoming accessible to everyone, even young yeshiva students. And this is not the place and the time to elaborate on it, but until the yeshiva was established, Bochum did not really study Chassidus. Chassidus was reserved just for married men who were more mature, more responsible, and they were the ones who studied Chassidus, but not young Bochum. This was the first time that young Bochum was studying Chassidus. In fact, the older Chassidim had a hard time digesting it. It was very different than what they're used to. They couldn't understand how is it, but of course, no one questions a Rebbe, so they understood that this must be a new era, that Bochum was studying Chassidus. And the Rebbe Rashab at the time said something which was an open prophecy. It's not just studying Chassidus. From this yeshiva will come a movement of spreading Chassidus and spreading Chassidus to the entire world to bring Mashiach. In fact, the Rebbe Rashab said, I have been guaranteed. And he added, I'm sure everyone knows the difference between I guarantee or I've been guaranteed. Saying I've been guaranteed implies that I've been guaranteed from somebody or someplace which is higher. That the students of this yeshiva will ultimately be spread throughout the world, and they will bring the Amun and Mashiach throughout the entire world, and bring godliness to the entire world, the four corners of the world, and eventually this will hasten the coming of Mashiach. In the previous Rebbe's generation, so I just want to say that Chayel is the day that the yeshiva was started. It was established and announced on the 15th of Elul. But when is the day where the actual yeshiva began to operate as a yeshiva? That was on Chayel. The previous Rebbe came to America and sort of transplanted the headquarters of Chassidus Chabad to the United States of America in Brooklyn, brought it to 770. The day that he moved into 770 was the 19th of Elul, even though it's not Chai, but clearly it was because it's the day connected to Chayel. And in our generation, we know that the Rebbe requested to expand and rebuild 770. In fact, the Rebbe himself participated in putting down the cornerstone for that purpose. That was in the year Tavshin Memches, 1988. Again, when was this done? Erev Chayel. It was done on the 17th of Elul. So we just mentioned 9 major events. All of them have to do and are part of the development of Chassidus, and they all happen either on the day or the day connected to Chayel. And there's one more thing that the previous Rebbe says in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that from Chayel until Rosh Hashanah, there are 12 days. And these 12 days correspond to the 12 months of the year, which means that on Chayel itself, we have the ability to be mesaken, to repair and correct everything that needs to be corrected from last year Tishrei. On the 19th of Elul, we can correct everything that needs to be corrected from last year Cheshvan. And on the 20th of Elul, we can correct everything that has to be corrected from last year Kislev, and so on and so forth. So clearly, Elul is a major day, and Elul in Elul itself is such a special time. So one of the things to talk about is why Elul? How come all these major events, that each and every one of them is a major part of the establishment of Chassidus? How could there be Chassidus if the Baal Shem Tov would not have been born, or the Alter Rebbe, and everything else? Why is it all in the month of Elul? And perhaps one of the ways of explaining it is we know that the Baal Shem Tov said that he heard from Melech HaMashiach when he asked, Eimasai Kosimar, when will you be coming? The answer was, L'chsheyafutzu meinesecha chutza, when your well springs will be spread throughout the world, which means when the teachings of Chassidus will be spread, that will bring Mashiach. And it's not just about the time, this is also explaining, as you would say, a mission statement, that the whole purpose why Chassidus was revealed and why the Baal Shem Tov was meant to spread Chassidus to the whole world is because the teachings of Chassidus, revealing the hidden secrets of Torah, will ultimately lead that the hidden identity of this world, which is Hashem, will also be revealed, that Hashem's presence will be revealed with the coming of Mashiach. So perhaps one of the ways of explaining it is that Elul is the preparation for Rosh Hashanah, and that's what Rosh Hashanah is all about. Rosh Hashanah is all about Hashem's, basically, sovereignty being revealed in the entire world. It's all about Hashem's Malchus. In other words, it's a time that we have to accept upon ourselves Hashem's kingdom, and we're davening and praying and asking that Hashem's kingdom and his sovereignty should spread to the entire world, that the whole world should accept him, and that's the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. So that's why in the davening, in preparation to Rosh Hashanah and on Rosh Hashanah, we prepare in this way, but from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, we insert different things in the davening, which we don't have all year. Zochreinu l'chaim, melech chofetz b'chaim. Instead of saying the bracha one way, we say HaMelech HaMishpat, the king that judges us. Instead of HaKel HaKadosh, HaMelech HaKadosh. And not only that, but if we look at the Shmona Esrei, the Shmona Esrei that we say for Rosh Hashanah is different than what we say all year long. And that difference is in Ma'ariv, in Shachris, in Musaf, in Mincha, and also on Yom Kippur. And if you look at that part which is inserted in the beginning, and that's where all the differences are, it's all about Mashiach and Hashem's Malchus. Just to go through briefly, it starts off, Hashem, you should put your fear upon the entire creation. Everyone should have fear and awe of you. Everyone should bow down to you. The whole world should all make one, unite together to serve you with a complete heart. When is that going to be? When Mashiach comes. The next part of the bracha is, Hashem, bring joy to your land. Simcha l'artzecha. Sasan lirecha, bring happiness to your city, which is Yerushalayim. Smichas keren leDavid avdecha, that the banner of King David should sprout, preparing everything for the descendant of Yishai, Mashiachecha, and may it be soon. Again about Mashiach. The next bracha we say that it would come the time that all other kingdoms which are evil will all be eliminated from the world. When is that? When Mashiach comes. You yourself will be the only one to rule. V'simlech ata Hashem Elokeinu. That's when Mashiach will come. So the whole thing of Rosh Hashanah is all about Hashem's kingdom, both that we accept Hashem's kingdom, and also that we're davening that his kingdom should be spread out through the whole world. And in essence, that's the whole purpose of Chassidus, to bring Mashiach, like I said before, by revealing the hidden secrets of Torah. This brings about that the hidden dimension of the universe, which is the light of the universe, which is Hashem, will also be revealed. In fact, this is also connected to the king is in the field. We all know the mashal, that Rosh Hashanah, the king is in the field. What it means is that we can approach the king, Hashem, we can ask him for whatever we need. Hashem receives us, the Sefer Panim Yafas, different than all year long. He receives us with a pleasant face, with a smiling face, and we're bound to have our requests fulfilled. But there's another thing. What are the people doing in the field? when you look at this mashal. The king is coming, and people are going out to greet the king. They're going out to accept the king. In other words, this is what Elul is all about, accepting Hashem as a melech. In essence, that's what Mashiach is all about. And that's why perhaps all these things are in the month of Elul. And maybe explains another thing. We mentioned before that the Baal Shem Tov had spoken to Mashiach. When did this happen? So the Baal Shem Tov writes, this is on the first page of Keser Shem Tov, that's the sefer that has the sayings and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a letter that he wrote to his brother-in-law, whose name was Reb Gershon Kitteler. And he writes to him that on Rosh Hashanah, Tov Kuf Zayin, which means the year of 1747, my neshama ascended to a high place. And he goes on to many details, but eventually he came to the chamber of Mashiach. And he asked Mashiach, Emasai Kosimar, when will you come? And Mashiach told him, when your wellspring will be spread. Of course, these are things way beyond our comprehension, but we always are told to make an attempt to give some explanation. Why did it happen on Rosh Hashanah? If this is about Chassidus, the hidden secrets of Torah, why is it connected to Rosh Hashanah? Perhaps Lag BaOmer would have been more appropriate time for this to happen. This historic, fundamental message should have been given on a day like that. So perhaps this is the explanation, because Rosh Hashanah is all about crowning Hashem as a king and bringing Hashem's kingdom to be revealed in the whole world, that everyone, all the nations of the world will accept his sovereignty. And therefore, being that that's what Chassidus is all about, and that's what the purpose of Chassidus is to bring Mashiach, it's actually the most appropriate day of the year for that is the day of Rosh Hashanah. So what it means practically is that we should learn Maimarim, learn the Sichas, where we have the teachings of Chassidus, explains us the deeper meaning, the deeper purpose of Torah, of mitzvahs, and that's the reason why it's called Ma'eres. You know, we said before that the Rebbe Rashab said the Yontif, this is the birthday of the two great luminaries, because they brought the light of Chassidus into the world. Torah in general is called light, and then Chassidus is the light within the light. Why is it compared to light? Some people think that Chassidus is another pshat. When you learn something, there's one pshat, there's another pshat, and Chassidus is another pshat. But the truth is, it's different. It's not another pshat. This will be compared to walking into a room, and you can bring in different pieces of furniture. You can bring in a table, you can bring in a chair, you can bring in some svarim, you can bring in pens and paper, you can bring in a computer. There are different things you can bring in. But what happens when a person brings in light? He turns the light on. When you turn on the light, you didn't bring in another article, another item. When you turn the light on, now everything in the room can be seen more clearly what it is and what it's all about. When the room is dark, you see things not in a clear way. And when the light is lit, you see everything clearly. So Torah in general is called Torah Or, because Torah is like light. When a person studies Torah, their perspective on everything in the world is a different perspective, a deeper perspective, a more truer perspective. And within Torah itself, Chassidus is light because it gives us a deeper and truer and more inner perspective on Torah and mitzvahs and everything that goes along with it. So as we approach this time of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Seismei Tshuva, all these Yom Tovim, major part of our year, where we have all the Yom Tovim, when you study Chassidus and Sichas, take advantage of the gift that Hashem gave us to learn what is Rosh Hashanah and what is Yom Kippur and how do we prepare. And all this learning is something which generates tremendous amount of chayas. It's not just about a day of judgment and talking about which reward or punishment chas v'shalom a person will get. It's much deeper than that. It's about Hashem and his presence and what's shining spiritually on these days and how it's able to uplift us and what I can do to absorb it and how does it affect me in terms of my serving Hashem and so on and so forth. So the Eibush are helping that we should have the understanding to take advantage of the opportunity that we have and use this gift of Chassidus that we have to enhance our lives, the lives of all those around us, and the lives of our own family members, and ultimately, through learning Chassidus, bring the light of Mashiach to the entire world. So this is the first part. And the second part is more questions. So I don't know if anyone that's on now wants to bring up a question. Or maybe before we go into the questions, I think another thing maybe we can do is talk a little bit about current events and how that relates to Mashiach. The last 2 days were rocky days. And I want to talk about that a little bit. First of all, a few different points that could be brought out, and everyone is welcome to join in if they have something to add. But I'd like to say the following. When the Persian Gulf War began, and it turned out to be a tremendous victory, and the Rebbe said then over and over and over, because that year was Tafshin Nun Aleph, Tehei Shnas Neflois Harenu. Based on a pasuk, Kim Eitzeis Chameret Mitzrayim Harenu Neflois. I will show you wonders when Mashiach comes that'll be just like you went out of Egypt. On the superficial level, it seems to be saying, just like you went out of Egypt, I showed you wonders. So till Mashiach comes, I'll show you wonders. And of course, that's what it means. But it's brought down in many Mefarshim and Midrashim. It's more than that. It means that the wonders and the miracles we're going to see when Mashiach comes in some way are similar to the miracles which we saw when we went out of Mitzrayim. And then the Rebbe said one of the miracles that happened in Mitzrayim was the Makkah Mitzrayim B'Bchareim. That before the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, which was Kedusha defeating Klippa, something happened that the Egyptians themselves defeated and fought with their own Egyptians and crushed them. And what was that? That was the story with the firstborn, that they were petrified when they heard that the firstborn are going to die, and they demanded that Paro let the Yidden go. Paro refused, so the firstborn organized themselves and had a war against Paro, and many of them were killed. And this was the beginning of evil. Egypt at that time, which was the essence of evil, was destroyed. And the next stage was Yidden going out of Mitzrayim. And the Rebbe said that we saw something similar to this with Iraq. That at the time, not only that Iraq will threaten Rahman al-Islam, Israel with to annihilation, that he was defeated, but that the Makkah, Mitzrayim, and B'Chareim was the other nations of the world, not just Yidden, other nations of the world that fought him, humiliated him, punished him for what he wanted to do, and so on and so forth. I was just thinking that is an interesting thing that just happened here. There was this big miracle that thousands of terrorists, murderers, savages, as we've seen, who threatened Eden, miraculously, through the beepers, and then the next day through the walkie-talkies, that they were disabled. Either they killed or they were just disabled that they can't do those things that they wanted to do. How did it happen? Strange enough, what it says all over is that they were actually using cell phones. And the head of this organization, the head Klippa, Abi Avei Satuma, he suggested that they should start using beepers because that's going to be more secure. And as a result of his suggestion, they were successfully able to do what they did. So, in a sense, it's the Klippa itself that helped destroy the Klippa. What's important for us is that to recognize that this was a ness. When things like this happen, so much, it's every little detail is so sensitive, so much can go wrong. And the fact that it happened, and it was successful, and it accomplished what it did, besides everything else that caused them to be humiliated and disabled in many ways. And of course, there's no doubt that this is a big blow to them, to the force of Klippa. This is a miracle. I know there are people say, nah, Israelis are brilliant. Look how smart they are. They pulled through something like this. October 7th, they were also brilliant. And October 7th, unfortunately, happened. So to say it wasn't a miracle, and it was the brilliance and skill of Israeli military people, is Amalek. Because Abishta always performs miracles like that. That is a way. Hashem wants us to have free choice. I remember hearing a story with the Baal Shem Tov, that one time the Chassidim came to the Baal Shem Tov, and they said, when the Baal Shem Tov used to say words of Torah, his face would become fiery red. But such a fiery red that was like totally not natural. It was because he was in a different world. He was on fire with the Torah that he was teaching. So when there would be these conversations between his students and the people who were misnagdim, they were opponents of Chassidus, they would say, just look at his face. Look, his face is such a fiery red. He's in a different world. Can't you see it? They would say, nah, he drank a lot of wine. And people, when they drink a lot of wine, their face becomes very red. So that's all it is. Don't make a big fuss out of it. So the Talmidim came to the Baal Shem Tov and said, do we have permission to remove the wine from the table so they won't be able to say that? So the Baal Shem Tov said, everything in Kedusha, everything that a Yid has to achieve in Kedusha has to come through free choice. So there has to be free choice. And therefore, let the wine be on the table. And they have the choice either to choose and say that this is something that is just natural, or they can understand and see that this is something which is godly. Even when Hashem made Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, how did he do it? There was a wind blowing. The wind was blowing all night. And it was such a strong wind that it split the water. And there's always room to say, oh, that's what it was. The water split. It just happened to be that the water split the moment they needed to go across. And it so happened to be that the wind stopped just when they got across and the Egyptians had to go across. And of course, you can say all these things. Hashem arranges it. There should be always room for free choice. Here we saw the fulfillment of our prayers. We say this in davening. We say this in Kiddush Levana. Tipul aleihim in masav fachad. We say in Ashrei, Shemer Hashem eskol oyavo v'eskol shoim yashmid. As we say in Tilim, v'chol karni rishoim agadeya, tremamno karni tzaddik. We saw this with our own eyes. This was Hashem's miracle. Besides all the miracles that have been happening almost every day, something else which is miraculous, we have to recognize that. I remember when I was, during the 6-Day War, I was in Australia, and I went to hospitals to do miftzayim. And one of the people there said to me, how come, it was a little bit after the war, maybe a month or two, how come we don't see miracles today, only in biblical times? Well, why don't they happen in our times? So I said, are you kidding? The 6-Day War, this was an absolute miracle. I said, no. Moshe Dayan, he was the general at that time. Moshe Dayan, he knows these Arabs like his 5 fingers. Very smart. He knows what he's doing. So the 6-Day War, where the whole world was stunned. The expectations were totally different. In 6 days, now we can appreciate it even more. In 6 days, the war was over. The war was over with an absolute victory, with Eretz Yisrael gaining ground, more ground simply in quantity and also quality. Eretz Yisrael, the Yerushalayim and Hebron and other places. So clearly it was an incredible miracle, but a person comes along and says, no, Moshe Dayan, he knew these people like on his 5 fingers. And same thing now, when you see politicians speaking who can't bear to see the success of Yidden say the most ridiculous things. I'm sure you heard this, where this big person said, what the Israelis did is an act of terror. They disabled terrorists is called an act of terror. The Israelis don't have the right to defend themselves. What the Israelis did, they just started a war. The fact that for 10 months, 12 months, 11 months, they've been sending rockets into Israel, that was just a little game. The fact that we did something, that's called starting a war. You see all sorts of ridiculous statements. We know where it's coming from. But when you speak to people, when you hear people that are making comments as military experts, they are stunned about the success of what has been happened, that in 2-3 minutes, thousands of terrorists were moved out of the way. So this is our Avodah, to recognize that it's a miracle, thank Hashem for the miracles, and ask Hashem to continue with the miracles until we see the miracle in the most complete way.
I have a question, Rabbi Majeski.
Let me just see if I can make this a little bit louder. 1 second. I don't hear it. 1 second. Okay.
So you said that when Mashiach comes, it's going to be like how when we were taken out of Mitzrayim. And
Right.
I'm like, when we were in Mitzrayim, that was the lowest low that we as Yidden could really descend. Like the environment was horrible, you know? So and also when I think of Mitzrayim, I think of Pesach and that song Dayenu. And so it's like, when is enough gonna be enough? Is Hashem gonna take us lower, like to that kind of scenery to then take us out? Because I feel like even now it's been enough that, you know.
No, actually, the words and the verse that I quoted, it doesn't say that whatever happened in Egypt will happen now. It says the miracles that will happen now will be similar to the miracles that happened then. The good things. It doesn't say that everything that happened then will happen now.
Because I hear that and it's like the miracles that we've been taken from such a low place. So it's like hopefully like we don't have to, you know.
No, the Rebbe has reiterated so many times. We did our time. We're all ready to go. We can't even understand why it's taking another second.
Okay,
And
that's good.
certainly
Yeah.
we're almost there.
Okay, amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering.
You're welcome. One of the questions someone asked me, a personal question, I guess, was, we're coming to Rosh Hashanah. And Baruch Hashem, I have this chus for, oops, what did I just do?
Oh, sure. Oh, no. Oh, I forgot to do that.
You're still on. We're still here. We can hear you.
Oh, it's the on. Okay.
Hi. Okay. You think you're good?
Thank you. Okay.
Maybe you went off on the Zoom on Facebook?
What?
Maybe you went off on Facebook. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, sorry.
You want to see the people or you go?
No, that's fine. Yes, there were a lot of things that happened on these days, or Shoshana. It's very hard to say what was the most awesome moment, but I would say perhaps, at least for me, was that we know that before Rosh Hashanah, people give the Rebbe a pan. We give the Rebbe a note. Now on the note, we ask the Rebbe to daven for us, for Sivach Simateva, for a good year. And in the note, we write down our names, the names of all our family members, or other people that we know that need a blessing, and we give it to the Rebbe. And these notes were put into packages, wrapped around in brown paper. And when the Rebbe went down to shul to daven on Rosh Hashanah, there was a little table next to the Rebbe, And those packages were put down next to the Rebbe. Was at 5 packages, usually 5 or 6. When the Rebbe went to blow the shofar, he went up to the Shulchan Akriya, the table where they read from the Torah, and the packages were brought there as well. The Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Groner, brought the packages, put it down there. When it came to blow the shofar, as we know, the Rebbe himself blew the shofar. And before blowing the shofar, we say the chapter Tehillim 47. We say that 7 times. When the Rebbe was all ready for the blowing of the shofar, actually ready for the chapter of Tehillim, the Rebbe would take his talus and cover himself with all the packages, take the packages all under his talus, and that's where he would say the chapter of Tehillim 7 times in preparation for the shofar blowing. It was something which was amazing, and I don't even know the right word to use for it, but basically here we saw the Rebbe as a shepherd, as a father, taking all of us under his talus and going before Hashem's throne and asking for every single one of us and all the things we wrote for what we need. And for me, at least, I think this was one of the most awesome moments of the entire Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. If someone else has something else to point out, that the way they dealt, the way they felt about certain things, that's also okay. We can hear that. Someone asked a question about what just happened. Is it okay to rejoice, sing, and dance about what just happened in Israel with Hezbollah? So again, I just finished saying that it is a miracle. You have to thank Hashem for the miracles. There is a similar story in Gemara, but the Gemara says that when the Egyptians were drowning in the sea, and the Yidden was singing to Hashem, Az Yosher, thanking Hashem and praising him for the miracles. It says that there was a sort of complaint where the Eibishter said, Hashem said, Ma'aseh Yodai Tu'im Bayam, my creation is drowning and you're singing. How could you sing when people here are drowning? So I guess if we're singing, if we're happy, it's because we're happy that Hashem performed the miracle to save our lives. Unfortunately, we see every day, unfortunately, that something happens to another Jewish man, a woman, a child in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, we thank Hashem that he eliminated those people who are committing these crimes and are attacking us. But of course, it could be understood, it could be misinterpreted as if we're enjoying to see other human beings suffering, and that's not the point. That's not a message that's going to have any positive effect. Again, the message has to be we thank Hashem for the miracles, and therefore, especially now where everything people say and everything people do goes viral, it goes around the whole world. And now once you say it and once you do it, then the whole world sees it. It's no longer in your hands. Now it depends how people will interpret it. You know, in Yiddish, there's an expression, and if people would remember this, it would help us from saying the wrong things. And that is that whatever I didn't say today, I can always say tomorrow. Or whatever I already said, I can't take it back. Once I say something and another person heard me, now it's in their head. And they translate it, and they explain it, and they interpret it the way they see it. And I can't control that. So therefore, when you do something, especially in the public, you have to be extremely careful and cautious, especially that it shouldn't be something which would be interpreted as a chil Hashem. Another question that comes up is, we know that thousands of men, women, and children leave their homes, come to the Rebbe for Yontif. But there are a lot of men that not everybody in the family could come, and not all the wives can come, so the men themselves come. And people ask, this seems to be a little bit, what is going on here? You hear me? Why don't I?
We hear you, we see
Oh,
you.
okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. I can't move my hand. I don't know what I'm touching, what I'm moving. Things are very sensitive. So the question is it's a Yontif, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's Yom Kippur, there's Yontif meals, there's Shabbos meals, and the husband goes away to the Rebbe for so much time, and the whole family doesn't have them sitting by the meal. Is this really the right thing to do? We know it's the right thing because it's always been done, and not only the Rebbe didn't speak out against it, on the contrary, made every effort to welcome the guest, to honor the guest, asked all of us that live in Crown Heights to open our homes and to honor them, and so on and so forth. The Rebbe referred to it as his personal guest. But the answer to this is very simple. Isn't this what happened in the Beis Hamikdash? In fact, over there, it happened 3 times a year, and it was an obligation. And it was an obligation on the men that every Yontif, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, all the men left their homes and left their families. Not all the women were able to travel. They definitely weren't even obligated to travel. And they went to the Beis Hamikdash and they spent Yontif there, and then they came back. So clearly, the bracha that this is going to bring to the family and to everyone in the family, and also to the Shalom Bayis in the family, if it's done the proper way, then it's going to be much greater than if I hadn't gone. Because ultimately, when you're by the Rebbe, all the brachas that come from Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, these are all brachas that last for the whole year. And these brachas that we absorb are going to bring the greatest blessings for the whole family. So therefore, if you would think of it, imagine, just to use a mashal that the Nefesh HaBahamish would understand, imagine if a woman wouldn't want her husband to go away, and he says, I'm going to this place, and they are going to give me $1 million if I'm there for a month, and when I come back, we have $1 million in our account. I highly doubt that there is a woman, a wife, that would not want her husband to go. $1 million would just change their life completely. Or maybe some people, that's not enough. Okay, so we'll give a mashal of $10 million. And maybe some people, that's also not enough. Whatever number you want. There's a number that once you're told that you're going to get this, and this will be able to enhance your life, of course, you would agree that they should go. So we have to understand that coming to the Rebbe is amazing brachas, begashmias, beruchnias, and there's nothing that could compare to getting these brachas. But of course, every situation, the Rebbe always would tell people they should check with their mashpia, check with their rav. Every situation is unique, and a person should check and be sure that they're going is going to be something which will be okay. It won't chas v'sholom have any negative effect on the family.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
That sometimes when Elul comes, it's like we all have these things that we want to like refine in a certain way, like we want to correct, right? But
Right.
sometimes it feels like so overwhelming. It's like the days pass by and it's like oh, like I'm losing my time. Like I don't know, like you try to do your best, but still it's like hard. So what advice would you give for us, like to to be more like effective in a certain way and not get overwhelmed by like everything we want to do, and like be realistic, like it's not like we can change ourselves in 1 month, and I'm sure also that's not what Hashem wants, because through the
Right.
whole year we are working on ourselves. It's not like a little comes and it's like, oh, I didn't do nothing. Like we have from Pesach to Lag BaOmer, we also like count the Omer and we also do our work. So it's like it's a process of the whole year. in
Right,
kind.
true. So you're right. In fact, that's one of the things about Chassidus that teaches us that even Elul should be done with a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, with simcha. And if I find that preparing for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, is somehow becoming stressful, overwhelming, bringing me down, I'm doing something wrong. That itself is a sign that I'm doing something wrong. I'm taking something and doing more than what I should be doing, or I'm focusing on something more than I should be focusing. And I think that this is one of those things where the Rebbe told us to turn to mashpia. Sometimes we can't trust our judgments. Sometimes if I don't do certain things, maybe I'm just being easy on myself. If I do certain things, I'm being too harsh on myself. And it's very hard to know the emes when I'm making my own judgment. So this is a situation where if I speak to another person who's objective, they can usually see very clearly and tell you, you're just doing too much. You're focusing too much on this or too much on that. You have to be relaxed. So preparing for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, has to inspire us, has to lift us. And if it's not, it's time to check it out and find out where am I going wrong. I'm doing something which is out of line. And definitely that's a very important thing to be aware of, because again, it's supposed to inspire us and lift us, not bring us down.
Thank you. Yes,
You're very welcome.
I spoke like with a teacher of mine, and she said like sometimes it's also good to take time and look for what we've accomplished. Like sometimes it comes and it's like we want to do the response, which is like amazing, but we kind of forget to see like how we have grown, what we have done better. So yes.
Right. So we have to recognize not only what's wrong, we have to recognize what's right, what's good, what I've accomplished and what I've achieved. And like I said before, recognize the gifts that we have and allow it to feel good about it and be excited about it. You know, some people feel that if I feel good about something that I did, there's something wrong with it. No, there's nothing wrong. That's amazing. And that's what motivates us to do more. And that's the main thing that counts is hamaiso iker, action. But this is definitely one of the main tactics of the Yetzer Hara, where he comes to us and is more demanding and tries to push us to do more, all these kind of things. And his ultimate goal is really to pull us down rather than to make us go higher. He knows that these are the thoughts so we have to be aware. You know, that when the Yetzer Hara comes like that, it's like a spy. You know, he comes dressed like somebody that's part of your team. He looks like one of ours. He speaks like one of ours, but he's really not. He's an enemy. And same thing over here. You know, the Yetzer Hara sometimes comes along and says, you should daven more, you should learn more, you should spend more time on this, less time on that. And it sounds like very holy, but it's really the Yetzer Hara in his famous disguise. Okay, I'd like to wish everybody a ksivach simeteva, l'shana teva umesuka. Everybody should have a good year, a healthy year, a happy year, a successful year, a sweet year. All the good things you wish for yourself should be fulfilled. And of course, what we wish for Eretz Yisrael, like I said before, the complete, absolute victory for Yidden, and all the enemies of Yidden should be totally defeated. We're talking about the physical enemies that are fighting, the political enemies that are fighting us in another way. We should see Hashem's miracles more open, so no one will have any doubts, and then see the ultimate miracle, which is not just the hostages and the soldiers coming home, but all of us will go home to our true home, which is Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, with Mashiach taken miyad mamash.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All the best, everybody. Bye,
Thanks,
Rachel.
Rabbi Majeski.
All the best.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.